Hi everyone, welcome to another BricksMembers tutorial. Today I will show you how to actually use user levels to protect your content. So this is a little extension of the Understanding User Levels tutorial where I showed you how to create user levels and how to assign them to users using several methods, both manually and automatically. So if you haven't done yet, then watch this tutorial first because this is important to know beforehand so that you are now capable of applying those user levels to content to protect that content later in Bricks Builder or via redirects. And I will also show you how that works. So you will learn in this tutorial how to assign user levels as required levels to all your content. Then also how to restrict content in Bricks Builder so that it only shows up to the right users. Or if you don't want that, also how to use redirects to redirect users that don't have the required user level to a certain page. So let's get right into it. Like you see here, we have several user levels. And now the first thing that I want to do is to apply it to posts, pages, or terms. So basically all types of content in WordPress that can all be restricted with user levels. And there are 4 ways to do so. The first one is the manual one. It's quite slow, but sometimes it can be useful. So for example, if I want to restrict a page here, let's click on pages. Then let's say I want to restrict the courses page. Then here on the courses in this page, when you scroll down in this edit screen here, you find this user level box. And there you can just select all the user levels that should have access to this page, click save, and then you have those user levels assigned. So super straightforward. I think I don't have to explain more about that. And the same stuff works for posts, for example, if I have a normal post here. Now we don't have a post yet, so let's just add one here. And when I scroll down, you see directly that we have this user level box here. And so again, you can just select the user levels that fit and click publish or save, and they are assigned to this post. And you see also that already some user levels are applied, and that is because I have certain automation rules active, but I will come later to that. And let's also have a look at terms. So for example, here when I click on categories, if I would create a new category, then I could also directly select user levels here, and they will be assigned to that term for like archive pages, etc. And the same goes here for the edit screen of categories and terms. That's all there as well. So this is the manual way of assigning user levels to posts or all sorts of content as required levels. But of course, it is a bit slow. Like oftentimes you have a ton of posts or maybe even many pages or so. And for that, you do have 3 other ways to do so, depending on what kind of content it is. So let's start with the first one. And that is that if you go to BricksMembers and then bulk assign levels, there you find bulk assignment tools for user levels to assign user levels as required levels to all sorts of WordPress content. So let's start with the first one here, assign to posts by structure parents. You will most likely never use that because we have another way of doing that for structure posts. Like what I mean with structure posts here is custom posts that are within our content structures from the BricksMembers plugin. So here, for example, I have my courses structure. And there I could now apply user levels based on their parents. So you see here, for example, I have lesson posts and they are all in a certain module in a certain course. So when I'm here on the bulk assign levels page, I can, for example, now select the content structure courses. Then I can select the lesson level. Now you see here, I could now just select camera basics and then automatically it will be applied to all lesson posts. So I click on user levels here, select the user levels that I want to apply. So let's choose all those here, camera basics course, anything else? No, okay. Add user levels, and you see it added 6 user levels to 11 posts. You can also remove user levels if you want to, and then they are removed from those posts. And again, like you don't necessarily need this by structure parents box here, because you can also do that directly in the structures interface. And I will come to that in a moment because that's actually quite nice. It's, in my opinion, the most user-friendly way of applying user levels. So let's come to the next one here, and that is assign to posts by term. So there we group by term. So for example, now let's say I have lessons here, and then I have this term test. We have only 1 post in there now because I'm just testing here. But yeah, then it would show all posts here that would be in that test term. And then you can assign your user levels. It works for tags, for categories, for everything, like you select that here. And the other one is assign to terms. So there, of course, it's a bit simpler because you can't really group terms aside from their parents. So let's select, for example, here series, and there now you see all my series terms, and I can also just select some here and assign user levels, however you like. And then you can also assign to posts by relationship fields, and there we have a little detection, like it should work with all relationship fields that are somehow available in WordPress. Like we natively support all the major plugins like ACF, Metabox, etc. But there's also a generic detection in there that tries to detect fields that contain post IDs, so that even maybe some rare plugins that not so many people use are supported. So you just go in here, and for example, now I have my videos post type here, which has a relationship field. So I select the relationship field here, ACF lesson. And now I find all those lessons here. Okay, load posts, and then it shows all the posts here, and I can assign the user levels. Of course, it depends on your structure here. Now it only shows me one post because I only have one post with that relationship field. Of course, if you have more posts within one relationship field, then it will show that as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense, right? And then the next one is assign to posts by related taxonomy. To be fair, that's a pretty rare case, because in advanced custom fields, you also have a field type called related taxonomies, which essentially means like relationship field for taxonomies. And you can also filter posts here by that. I think I actually used that also with my videos. Yeah, exactly. So here, okay, I don't have any terms assigned anymore, but yeah, if there would be now any terms for that field, then it would load that. So again, it's rare, but if you have that case where you use those ACF related taxonomy fields, then you can group by that as well. And we also have the assign to pages card here, which comes in version 0.94 of BricksMembers. And there you just click on load pages, and it shows you all your pages, including the parent-child relationships. So if you have some child pages or so, then you can also just select the parent, and it will automatically select all childs. Select your user levels, and you can directly assign them all as you like. So pretty straightforward. This is basically how you can quickly assign user levels as required levels to all sorts of WordPress content. But there are two more automatic ways to handle that. And that's at first what I kind of teased before, that when you go into our content structures interface, where you actually build course structures, then you can also directly do that in the structure. And that's, in my opinion, for like all that structured content that you generate with BricksMembers, the best way, because it's super easy. Like here, for example, in that creator crash course, I could now just click on the quick edit modal here, quick edit. And then you find this apply level changes to all child posts checkbox here. So when I click that, it automatically assigns all the levels that I have assigned here to that post to all childs. So I click on save, little message here, success. And then when I look at all those posts here, they're all assigned there. So now all child posts of that course have the exact same required levels. And this is generally what you want. Like you want to restrict a full course or so with just one user level or multiple user levels, depending on what tiers you sell. And you also have another option that's especially useful when you create new courses here or new content in those structures. So for example, if I would go into edit mode here and I would add a new lesson, then I could check this checkbox here, inherit required levels from parent, and then it will automatically inherit all the required levels from its parent. So in that case here, from that module, so it would automatically get all those required levels here. And the same also works if you're in a quick edit modal. So for example, here, if I go to quick edit, then I could also click inherit required levels from parent, and it will just get all this parents, this levels from its parent, also from the module in that case. And what you see here now is that we actually have two checkboxes. We also have apply level changes to all child posts, because in that case, a lesson here in that structure can also contain video posts. So I could also now assign those levels automatically to all video posts downwards. So yeah, in all those posts that are not top or bottom level, you actually get both of those checkboxes. And yeah, as mentioned, this is like the, in my opinion, most convenient way to assign user levels to structured content, because essentially when you create your structured content, you will just keep the inherit from parent checkboxes always on. And then whenever you add a new post, doesn't matter if it's a module, a lesson or whatever, then it will automatically inherit all those user levels. So you don't actually have to set up anything at all anymore. You just do it once on the top level, like the course usually, and it will automatically get all the right user levels. You don't have to do anything anymore. And there's one more way, which you kind of saw before already, which was that whenever I add new content here, for example, like if I create a new post here, then you see that user levels are automatically checked. And this is the automation rules that we have in BricksMembers. So if we go to the BricksMembers settings screen here under level automation, then you can create those user level automation rules. And that especially makes sense to use if you have user levels that essentially should protect all your content on the page. So for example, I have that Learn with Pascal Elite user level here, and this is a user level that gives users access to literally all content on that membership site. So here, for example, it made total sense for me to just set that up so that it's automatically applied to all posts and all taxonomies directly when I create them. I can still go in there and remove them. Like for example, now let's say I would add a new post here. Let's give it a random name, and you see like those user levels here are selected automatically. I click publish now. Let's reload that. So then you see we're in this post, and now I could still remove one of those user levels in case I have a post that for whatever reason should not apply to those user levels. Then you see it's removed. So those rules don't mean that these user levels always stay assigned to all those posts. They just mean that whenever you create a new post, those user levels are automatically checked so that you don't have to do it manually all over again. You know, like if you add a couple hundred posts or so, it can get a bit annoying over time. And maybe if you want to restrict content on a blog, for example, then you might also forget that, and then suddenly content is visible for users that it should not. And these automation rules are just an easy way to automate that for you so that you never forget that in the future. So these are all the methods available to assign required levels to all sorts of content in WordPress using BricksMembers, but you don't always have to do so, because in the front end you also have an option in BricksBuilder at least to only show content directly based on user levels, even if they are not assigned to the current post. You will see that in a second. So let's come to that. Let me show you how to actually restrict content, at first using BricksBuilder and then using redirect rules with BricksMembers. So in order to show content dynamically only to users that have the correct user level, depending on the required levels that we've just assigned to certain types of content, you have two options essentially. It's conditional logic and it's query loop filters. So let's start with conditional logic because it's what you would usually do. So here, for example, I have my main container here, and I want this container to only show up to users that do have a certain user level. So here, if I click on conditions in BricksBuilder, then you see I have the condition user level match is yes applied. And what that does is it compares if the user or if any of the user levels that the current user has is the same as one of those required levels that the type of content that he is watching now has. And if yes, then it will show this part of content dynamically, or not if the user does not have this level. And you see we have multiple options here. We also have no. So in that case, it would only show the content if the user does not have the level, which is quite important when we go down here. Because here you see we have that message, you don't have access to this content, please purchase access here. And if we have a look here, under conditional logic, there it says user level match is no. So whenever a user does not have access, it shows him this message here. And that's quite useful, obviously, because what I essentially do there is I redirect him directly to where he can purchase access, which can eventually mean more sales. If the user is interested in another course, maybe he bought one course, but then he might be interested in watching another course, and then he's directly redirected where he can purchase it. And it makes him a bit more interested. Like, you can even include teaser content or so on here. Maybe you can like have a few free lessons of every course that he can watch to just make him more interested, and then he always has a purchase button to watch all the other lessons, etc. It's actually a common technique that's used quite a lot. And yeah, with this logic you can perfectly integrate that. And then we have a few other options here, yes plus empty and no plus empty. And what that means is that sometimes you have content that does not require any levels, like where you did not check any checkboxes from those required levels. And this is essentially that it will show users content that they have access to and empty content, or they will show content that they don't have access to and empty content as well. So that's useful if you have content on the membership site that you just don't give any user levels because it should also maybe be available to all users. Then you can use this empty functionality that is, for example, useful if you want to restrict certain content in a blog to ensure that even users that don't have access to certain content where you did not apply any user levels to still see this content. Otherwise, it could obviously become an issue. And this is only the first way, using conditional logic to dynamically show content. Now, you do have another option here, which is also under conditions. When we switch from user level match under BricksMembers to has access to levels, there you can select in or not in, and then you can select a user level directly, even if this level is not applied as a required level to the current post or other type of content that the user sees right now. And that, for example, can be useful if you have a really simple membership site where you only have one user level, for example, like you just sell one basic course or so, or one access pass to everything. Then you can just use one user level here, and you don't even have to assign any user levels to any posts or terms or pages or so, because essentially it's one user level for all users. But of course, there are also other use cases to it. Let's say you want, for example, have a sidebar where users that maybe already purchased a course dynamically see some advertisements for other courses, and that should also maybe only be shown to users that did not purchase the course that is being shown, for example. Makes sense, right? Like if you show an advertisement for a course that I already purchased, it's essentially wasted space. So by using, for example, not in, you can dynamically show content to users that did not purchase a current a specific course yet, and therefore you can essentially also generate more sales. So this is just another option that BricksMembers gives you to show content dynamically based on user levels, even if the current piece of content does not have this user level applied as a required level. Also quite useful. And there's of course also another way, which is not conditional logic, but for query loops. Because, for example, if we're looking here into our courses list, then maybe you only want to show the courses that a user has access to. And so here, when I'm on that query loop element, when you scroll down, you do see that there's also the BricksMembers control group, and this one has all sorts of filters. And there, when it comes to user levels, it's directly the first two ones here, which is user level match, where it also has match and match plus empty, and no match and no match plus empty. So this is essentially the same logic as that user level match stuff here that we had before in conditional logic, just as a query loop filter to dynamically only show posts, terms, or pages that do have the correct required level. And then specifically for user query loops, like if you select query loop type users here, we also have the include levels. So there you can type in level IDs, which you find here under BricksMembers, user levels, and then under ID here. So you just type in those IDs there. and then it will only show users that have those levels. Can also be quite useful for certain leaderboards or so, whenever you want to show some listings of users. And yeah, so this is essentially how you restrict content then inside query loops to ensure that only the right users see it. And again, here you can also be creative with that. Like if we're looking at this actual page here, you see that I show the courses that I have access to here, but I also have a container which is slightly blurred and grayed out that shows all the courses that I don't have access to. So for example, if I would go into my profile now and let's say I only have access to the Final Cut Pro video editing course, update my profile, go to courses, then you see it shows this post in colored so that I know, okay, I can now take this course, click continue or whatever and continue learning. And you also see now all the courses that I don't have access to, they are grayed out and slightly blurry. And of course, you can also link them to your actual sales pages so that users can purchase them. So you also have all the design controls here, like you can show it exactly the way you want dynamically, but there's also a third way to handle content protection, and this is a way that I don't necessarily recommend, but well, you might want to use that for certain use cases, and that is when you go to the access control page here, that you have the create redirect rules box and the general redirect rules. And this is where you can create redirects based on user level matching. So if a user has access to a certain type of content, then he will just see it as normally. But if he does not have access, he gets redirected to a certain page. So for example, with the general redirect, you would just put one page here where all users that don't have access to a certain user level get redirected. Or you can also create rules for specific user levels that they get redirected to certain pages. And I don't necessarily recommend doing that most of the time because it's not really that flexible like you saw before. Like when we are on actual course pages or lesson pages or so, like dynamically showing content or messages that a user does not have access to allows us to do quite a lot of stuff and be creative there to maybe get more sales or to make the user a bit more interested or so. But with those redirects, your options are a bit more limited, especially if you use that general redirect rule here, because that's essentially like always the same page for every user that doesn't have access. And that, of course, doesn't let you customize the message that the user gets, for example, that well. And yeah, even with create new redirect rules, they're a bit more flexible because you can at least show specific content based on specific user levels that don't match. So it is a little bit better, but it's still not as dynamic as doing that completely in Bricks Builder. And when it comes to how to actually set up those rules, I already made another video about that where I explain the full access control page, which you will find here in the corner, and I will also link it in the description below. So check that out as well if you want to. And yeah, I think that's everything you really have to know to restrict content based on user level matching in BricksMembers. So try it out for yourself now. And if you do have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below this video and I will answer as soon as possible.